All right, today we're cracking open a must-read for anybody who's ever had a big idea. Guy Kawasaki's The Art of the Start 2.0. Think of it as the ultimate playbook for getting something new off the ground. And you know what? It all starts with one simple question.
And you know the feeling, right? You've got it, that spark, that aha moment, what feels like $1,000,000 idea, but then comes that big, overwhelming question, now what? Every single founder knows this feeling, that huge gap between your brilliant concept and, an actual living, breathing business. It can feel like you're staring across a giant canyon.
And this is exactly where Guy Kawasaki brings us back down to earth. He basically says, hold on, forget about those super complex business plans and the 5-year revenue projections, just for a sec. His whole point is that world-changing companies, they don't start by asking, how can we make a ton of money? Nope. They start with a moment of really simple but really powerful curiosity.
So that leads us right into our first big idea here, the spark of creation. Where in the world do these game-changing questions even come from?
Well, according to Kawasaki, they come from thinking like this. Take Instagram, for example. The thought process was something like, okay, pretty much everyone has a smartphone with a decent camera now, so what does that mean? What can we do with that? Or think about Google. It all started because its founders were just frustrated and thought, man, there's got to be a better way to find stuff online. The key takeaway here is this. These are all questions about creating meaning and fixing a real problem, not just about chasing a paycheck.
Okay, so you've got that initial spark. Now what? The very next step is to figure out if your idea can actually, survive out in the real world. And this is all about finding what Kawasaki calls your sweet spot. So Kawasaki says the startups that really last are the ones that live right here, where these 3 circles overlap. First, you need the expertise. You've got to have the skills to actually build this thing. Then you need passion, because trust me, there will be tough times and you'll need that fire to keep going. And finally, there has to be a real market opportunity, a place where people will actually pull out their wallets for what you've made. But here's the really cool part. Kawasaki says if you've got a strong lock on any 2 of these, you can almost always figure out how to develop the third. All right, so your idea is starting to feel solid. Now it's time to boil its purpose down to its very core. And for this, Kawasaki pretty much throws the old-school traditional mission statement right out the window. Instead, he wants you to create a mantra. Just think of it like the heartbeat of your company. Short, powerful, and essential.
And this example just nails the difference perfectly. Look at the left. That's Starbucks' formal, super long mission statement. I mean, honestly, could an employee on their coffee break even remember that whole thing? Probably not. But now look at the mantra on the right, rewarding everyday moments. It's short, it's positive, and it's all about the customer. That is a guiding light that everyone, from the CEO to the barista, can actually use every single day.
So, you've got your big idea and you've got your powerful mantra. Now it's time to get down to business and build what Kawasaki calls your MAT.
So what is a MAT? Think of it as your secret weapon for bringing some order to the absolute chaos of starting something new. It's a framework designed to keep you laser-focused on what actually matters, instead of getting pulled in 100 different directions by everything that's screaming for your attention. So here's how it breaks down. First, you lay out your big milestones. These are your major goals, like finishing a prototype or getting that first paying customer. Then you have to list out all the assumptions you're making. The big bets your whole idea is based on. After that, you create tests to figure out if those assumptions are actually true. And finally, you get down to the nitty-gritty, the tasks. This is your to-do list for hitting those milestones and running those tests. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful roadmap from idea to reality.
Okay, we've done a lot of planning. Now it's time to switch gears and get into the action. We're talking about the art of launching, actually getting your creation out there for the world to see.
And Kawasaki has a really critical point here. You don't want to just be a little bit better than what's already out there. He says that true game-changing innovation happens when you jump to the next curve, when you create a completely new way of doing something. The story of the ice industry is the absolute perfect example of this. You had Ice 1.0 in the 1800s, guys literally cutting blocks of ice from frozen lakes. But those guys didn't invent Ice 2.0, the ice factories. And guess what? The ice factories didn't invent Ice 3.0, the refrigerator. So why not? Because each one was just focused on making their own thing a little bit better. They weren't thinking about the next big leap. As a startup, that is your superpower, the ability to make that jump.
So how do you actually launch one of these curve-jumping products? Well, you definitely don't do it by waiting around for it to be perfect. You launch what's called a minimum viable product, or MVP. Kawasaki is a great kind of blunt mantra for this. Don't worry, be crappy. The whole point isn't to be perfect. The point is to get something,
anything out there so you can start learning from real customers as fast as humanly possible.
And this quote from Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, just says it all, doesn't it? If you are not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. That early version might make you wince when you look back at it, but you know what? That feeling is actually a good thing. It's a badge of honor. It means you actually got it out the door, you started learning, and you began that whole process of getting better, which is way more important than starting perfectly.
So we want to leave you with this final question to chew on. Look, perfection is the enemy of actually getting anything done. The world is just littered with amazing ideas that never happened because their creators were waiting for the perfect time or the perfect version. So the real question isn't about perfection. The real question is, what cringeworthy, imperfect, but absolutely brilliant thing are you going to start?